Equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are different fractions that have the same value. And so we can create equivalent fractions by multiplying the numerator, or the top number, and the denominator, so bottom number, by the same number. As multiplying a fraction, say 2 over 2, does not in fact change it, because you're really just multiplying it by 1. So let's look at an example. So example 1, we have a welder that has completed 1/3 of the jobs. Identify an equivalent fraction to 1/3. So we could go ahead and say 1/3. So this first one right here, we see that there are 3 rectangles inside a big one. And so we're going to say the whole thing is 1, and then we divide it into 3 parts. So if we're going to represent 1/3, all we would do is just draw 1 out of the 3. So this is one way to represent that 1/3. Now, if we want to represent an equivalent fraction to 1/3, say we wanted to get it to the same rectangle now, but into 9 different rectangles of equal parts, how many do we have to draw in to equal 1/3? Well, if we do this, we see that we have to do 3. And then that's the same, right? So we can see that the same whole, like this is the whole, is then broken into where the same amount is covered. So if we were to actually show this with numbers, what does this look like? What we would do is we take 1/3, and now we have 9. So what we did there, and we have 3 here, all we did was multiply this fraction by 3 over 3. So we multiply the numerator by the same number as the denominator. So 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So the bottom number is 3/9, the top number is 1/3. But as we can see by looking at our visual, we can see that they mean the same thing, they mean the same value, we just write it differently. So let's do another example. Example 2. A common fraction is 3/8. What are 2 equivalent fractions to 3/8? So we have 3/8. And we know that to create an equivalent fraction, we just multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. So if we want to go, we could just multiply both the top and the bottom by 2. So then we get 3 times 2 and 8 times 2. So 3 times 2 is 6. 8 times 2 is 16. So now we have 6 over 16, which is the same in value as 3/8. So this would be an equivalent fraction. You could have also done 3/8 times 3 over 3, which would give us 3 times 3 is 9, 8 times 3 is 24. This is also another equivalent fraction. Now you can just keep going. You could write 3/8 times 4 over 4. So because 3 times 4 is 12 and 8 times 4 is 32. So these are all equivalent fractions to the number 3/8. But since it only asks for 2, we could have just stopped here because we could have given 6 over 16 and 9 over 24. Now let's do another example. Example 3. For one cut, there was a curve of 1/4 inch. What are two equivalent fractions to 1/4? So we have 1/4. We need to find an equivalent fraction. So one we can find is just multiplying the top and the bottom by 2. So we go 1 times 2, which is then 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So 2/8 is an equivalent fraction of 1/4. Now let's do another one. So we have 1/4 times, we can do 3/3. 1 times 3, and then we would do the bottom, 4 times 3. So 1 times 3 is 3, 4 times 3 is 12. So these are two equivalent fractions to 1/4.